Emergency Decision Tree and Standard Operating Procedures for Disasters and Emergencies in Schools. The Emergency Decision Tree provides you with 6 standard operating procedures and 4 guiding questions to help any staff member assess a situation quickly and take the safest course of action. We'll look at the 6 standard operating procedures first. The 6 standard operating procedures are building evacuation, assemble and shelter outside, evacuate to a safe haven, shelter in place, lockdown, and safe family reunification. Let's look at these one by one. Safe building evacuation. The purpose of safe building evacuation is to protect students and staff in case of fire or other hazards in the building. The first person to verify the danger should sound the unmistakable building evacuation or fire alarm sound. Administration's role is to activate standard emergency response systems as needed, to maintain communication, and when the emergency ends to announce the all clear. Staff responsibilities are 1. Remind students of building evacuation rules. Don't talk, don't run, don't push, don't go back. Students should exit with buddies in twos. Number 2. Check that students or staff needing special assistance have it. Number 3. Close doors and windows. Number 4. Take classroom go bag or bucket, emergency clipboard or notebook, and bag with student comfort kits with you when exiting. Number 5. Evacuate with one adult in the front to check that the evacuation route is clear, and a responsible student monitor or adult at the rear of the group to see that everyone is together. This can also be done with 2 classrooms, with the first teacher at the front and the second teacher at the back. Number 6. Lead the class groups to their regular places to assemble and shelter outside. If and when conditions are safe, lead a reverse evacuation back to classrooms following the same rules. Student responsibilities are to follow the rules and instructions and help out. Plan and practice with everyone and figure out how to make it work for young children, for individuals with different functional abilities or communication needs. Young children can learn and practice in holding on to a looped handle on an evacuation rope in order to stay together, and infants can be rolled in a crib with wheels. Assemble and shelter outside. The purpose of assembly and shelter outside is to protect students and staff and provide for their comfort until everyone can be safely reunified with their families. Administration's role is to activate their standard emergency response division of labor with any functions needed. For example, an operations branch should be ready to implement light search and rescue, first aid, student supervision, and safe family reunification. A logistics branch should be able to provide water and food, shelter, sanitation, as the situation requires. Involve adult volunteers and capable students. Staff responsibilities are to lead students to their seats in the emergency assembly area and take student roll. Remind students about student release procedures and the goal of keeping them safe, and to teachers to remain with their classes at all times, or hand over to the nearest teacher if they have a different role in the response division of labor. Student responsibilities are to go to the designated assembly area and remain seated together with their class, to remain quiet for announcements, to be prepared to help with water and food, shelter and sanitation as requested, and wait to follow safe family reunification procedures. Evacuate to a safe haven. The purpose of evacuation to a safe haven is to protect students and staff in cases of hazards in the school environment. Administration's role is to plan ahead. Schools that face known risks, such as flooding, landslide, debris flow, or schools that do not have a safe assembly area on site, should arrange and prepare alternate safe assembly site and evacuation routes ahead of time. Inform parents of this alternate site. Lead immediate evacuation to your identified safe haven. Take your office evacuation supplies box. Staff responsibilities are to position one teacher at the head and one at the back, to take classroom go bags or bucket, emergency clipboards or notebook, and bag with student comfort kits, to check the safety of the route, and to include any students on the way in the group, to lead students to the safe haven and take student roll once there. If and when conditions are safe, lead reverse evacuation back to classrooms following the same rules. Student responsibilities are to use the buddy system, to stay together, to move quickly and quietly. At the safe haven, they are to follow instructions for assemble and shelter outside. Shelter in place. The purpose of shelter in place is to protect students and staff when there are dangers outside of school, for example, severe weather or flooding, and to provide for their comfort until everyone can be safely reunited with their families. Shelter in place is appropriate when evacuation is not necessary or when there is not sufficient time to evacuate. Administration responsibilities are to announce to stay in or return to indoor shelter areas, to monitor and provide information updates and instructions, and to announce all clear when the emergency has ended. Staff responsibilities are to close doors and windows as appropriate, to take attendance, to monitor and provide updates and instructions as available, to stay off phones that are needed for emergency communications, to supervise students indoors with schedules for learning, recreation, eating, and sleeping, to create private area for toilet using bucket and plastic bags, to allow students to help. Student responsibilities are to stay in the classroom and participate in activities and help out. Lockdown. The purpose of lockdown is to protect students and staff from violent intrusion or threat of violence. School administration responsibilities are to use a unique loud siren or alarm, not the fire alarm, to signal immediate lockdown, to monitor the situation and reassess, to be prepared to transfer command to police or public safety authorities, to provide the all-clear message when it is safe to do so, following the incident to inform students and parents and provide time for review and discussion. Staff responsibilities are to warn others to take immediate shelter, gather students inside a secure area away from the threat, close and lock doors, move furniture to block access from threat, have everyone drop and cover behind furniture and be as small a target as possible, turn off lights and radios and silence all cell phones, stay out of sight, away from doors and windows, and make sure that everyone stays calm and quiet. Student responsibilities are to help block doors with furniture, hide, drop, and cover, and stay quiet and follow teacher instructions. Safe family reunification. The purpose of safe family reunification is to ensure that students and families are safely reunited in case of emergency or disaster. Students under the age of 18 are not permitted to leave school or safe haven except in the company of an adult approved in advance by parents or guardians. Parents' responsibilities are to provide school with an updated list of emergency contacts who have permission to pick up their child at any time. Administration responsibilities in the event of emergency or disaster are to release students only to the persons previously authorized and to maintain documentation of the reunification. Staff responsibilities are to make sure that both students and parents are familiar with student release procedures for emergencies and disasters, to verify identity and ensure that students are released only to the persons listed in the Student Emergency Release Contact List, to keep a record using student family reunification forms or sign-out log, and to use these procedures anytime that normal procedures are considered unsafe. Students are responsible to be patient and follow safe family reunification procedures and not to leave with anyone except those approved in advance by their parents or guardians. Now let's look at the emergency decision tree and find out how to use it to decide on the safest course of action. Question number 1. Is there any warning before the hazard impact? Is the hazard rapid onset without warning, such as acts of violence, earthquake, and fire? If so, are you ready to react automatically with the appropriate standard operating procedure? These automatic responses to rapid onset hazards are important. In case of earthquake, drop cover and hold on. In case of earthquake and tsunami, drop cover, hold on, and count. In case of fire, evacuate, crawling if there is smoke. In case of flash flood, vertical evacuation if necessary. In case of violence, lockdown. If the hazard has a slow or medium onset, such as floods, cyclone, winter storms, etc., what kind of early warning information will you have? Has the system been tested? Will you have enough time to close school and use normal student release procedures to safely reunite all children with their families? If so, you will not face this hazard at school. If for any reason some children, staff, or visitors are at school, you may have to treat the condition as you would for a rapid onset hazard. In case of a rapid onset hazard, the question may lead you to take immediate action, including building evacuation or lockdown. Now it's time to ask the next question. Question number 2. Is the building safe? If the building is unsafe, then building evacuation should be immediately triggered. In the case of rapid onset hazards, such as fire and strong earthquakes, the building must be assumed to be unsafe, and therefore cautious building evacuation is automatically triggered. Note that during earthquake shaking, everyone should drop cover and hold on, and evacuation should only begin after the shaking has stopped. In other situations, a rapid assessment can be made before evacuation is announced by a school-wide alarm sound. If the building is safe, then the students and staff should be instructed to shelter in place. Question number 3. Are the school grounds safe? If the buildings are not safe to stay in, and if you have to evacuate, then question 3 must be answered immediately. If school grounds are safe, then assemble and shelter outside is the safest procedure. If school grounds are known to be unsafe, for example in coastal areas with tsunami risk, areas vulnerable to dam break and flooding, and so forth, then automatic evacuation to a safe haven should take place. If there are other hazards outside, then a rapid assessment, for example, of hazardous materials, fallen power lines, pipeline ruptures, and so on, will help to decide between these two options. Question number 4. Reassess for safety. Now you will be in one of 3 safe places, either in the building, shelter in place, outside the building, assemble and shelter outside, or at your safe haven, evacuate to a safe haven. No matter which procedure you have followed, you must reassess your conditions from time to time. In the case of real disasters and emergencies, if conditions are not safe or there are disaster impacts, safe family reunification procedures should be initiated, ensuring that students are returned directly and only to the care of parents or guardians or their pre-designated emergency contacts. Each reunification should be documented. Students should remain cared for and supervised until the last student is reunited. In the case of drills and smaller events, a reverse evacuation may be practiced to return to class and resume studies normally. Learn the standard operating procedures and use the emergency decision tree to decide on the safest course of action. In addition to the 6 standard operating procedures, there are also some rules for responses to specific hazards that are important to study and learn. These include fire prevention measures, fire safety rules, earthquake safety rules, flood safety rules, storm safety rules, and hazardous material safety rules. Please refer to the written guidance for all of these procedures.